It's beautiful meditation, Angie, and it dovetails a lot with what we're talking about today, and there will be some really helpful redundancy and different nuances that we see in this interplay, so I'm grateful for that. We are in this part of the Lord's Prayer called Give Us This Day, Our Daily Bread, and last week I shared with you both in word and song the Aramaic Lord's Prayer being performed by a man, who's just saying it, and then a young woman who sang it in her Middle Eastern basilica, wherever she may have been. Sometimes you come across a spoken prayer, and it's so good that you can't really improve on it. And this is one of these that I wanted to give you today, and so I hope it is as meaningful and rich to you as it has been to me.
Heavenly Father, I know you're a friend of the eating man. You created Sundays so we can have brunch. Please, O Lord, shower me with your divine grease and deliver me some egg rolls, or pizza, or hot dogs, whatever I can eat while driving. Thine is the flour and the gravy forever. Amen. You would be great. Thank you. What's the healthiest thing in this place? Chewy, we're home. Chewy is what I call my mouth.
I really don't care what you call your mouth.
There you go. Now to get you in a super spiritual mood, that's why I gave you that. So I had this interesting experience just a few weeks ago. It happens actually pretty regularly here at this time of year at Crosswalk, where I'm in my office and somebody comes in during the week. Sometimes it's Sunday morning, the same thing happens, and they're carrying a box full of fresh produce that they just harvested from their own personal garden, and they have too much. And so they bring in the leftovers here to share with our food pantry so it can go out the door, with fellow crosswalkers who might be lucky enough to be here at that time. And then whatever's left over, we put in our recovery rooms, and people coming here for recovery walk away with free, fresh produce. And it's a wonderful, wonderful thing to behold. So that's a very common occurrence here. And it's a lot of fun to see it, and I appreciate that generosity. But this one particular day where that happened struck me, because the person who came in, again, had their box full of stuff. And I thanked the person for sharing, the bounty of their good work and all that. And the person, everything about them was just beaming. Their body language, their face, everything. And they were just like, you know what? I get out there in my garden, and I look out at the sun, and this is just magic. It's just magic. I put seeds in the ground, I water a little bit, and all of a sudden, well, not all of a sudden, but in due time, we get food. Isn't it incredible? And he was like overcome with this. And I was so overcome with his being overcome that I got overcome with it, right? You get excited with people when they're getting excited about something that is so plain and ordinary in our sight every day, but we take for granted. It's incredible. One of the proof of God's existence is that creation continues to support itself. That is a proof of the loving nature of God. If there was no love behind this thing, we would just fall apart. We would just stop. But that's not what happens. Somehow this blue planet of ours has so much. And to take time to recognize that is worthwhile. So I'm going to have some quotes for you today that I think you might find helpful. 2 challenges coming your way, so get ready for that. And there will be prizes if you decide to step up for this. All right, so first quote. Hopefully. Beneath the bread that we consume daily is hidden a whole network of anonymous relationships of which we need to remind ourselves. Before it reaches our table, it receives the labor of many hands. The seed is planted in the ground. It has to be tended as it grows. Many hands harvest the grain or maneuver the powerful machinery. Many other hands store the grain and make the bread. Then there are the thousands of distribution points. In all this, we find the greatness and the wretchedness of human nature. Well, that's an interesting turn of phrase. The greatness and wretchedness of human nature. There can be relationships involving exploitation. Tears are shed over every loaf that we so calmly eat. But we also sense the fellowship and the sharing. Daily bread encompasses the entire human universe in its lights and shadows. And the first service just had some Q&A response at the end, and one of our folks who was there talked about how they were just coming back from Santa Barbara, and they were going up 101, where so much produce is produced. And he was just reminding us that the food that magically shows up at our grocery stores did not just magically show up there, but it's people that were working incredibly hard in extremely difficult circumstances who right now are terrified of whether or not they're going to make it home that night. That's where our food comes from. That's part of this dynamic of the wonder that we have food to eat, and yet this complexity of how we got it. It's complicated what we have. So this gets me to my first challenge. Because we continue to go at a very fast pace of life, I don't know about you, but yesterday before I went to a concert that we'd had tickets for some time, I needed something to eat. So what did I do? I grabbed one of my favorite protein bars, and within about 30 seconds, that thing was gone. I didn't take a second to think about it. I inhaled it, and it did its job, and away I went. Well, maybe that's not the greatest way to go for most of our meals. So here is your challenge. Challenge one for today and the next few days. Before you take a bite of your next meal, pause to reflect on the magical world we live in that allows us to survive. Take just a beat to be aware of all the cooperative effort that took place to get that meal before you, mostly people you don't know. Simply say out loud or in your head, I am so grateful. Thank you. Try this exercise on for a full day, then a week, then a month, and just see what it does for you. So taking this pause does lots of things. It makes you pause. It makes you focus on something else rather than just jumping into your In-N-Out burger or whatever you're going to have today. And you reflect in the incredible miracle that food is. Just try it. Just see what happens. And don't do it as a rote thing. I grew up in a family where we had a rote prayer before every meal. And frankly, as a kid, it just became so routine that it was largely meaningless. It was just words that we rattled off, that we wish weren't there so we could get to our food, honestly. But what if we take a second? What will that do for our appreciation of the very thing that we're eating and the people who gave it to us? Ann Bernardin, who leads up our health series stuff around here, she raised a comment in the first service, and she said, when we pause and eat slowly, we actually do our bodies a service. Our bodies digest it better, get the nutrition better if we take our time. So there is a physiological reason to slow down. Boy, I need to hear this. But then she said something else, which I thought was quite profound. She said, not only do you honor your body, but you honor all the bodies that helped get that food to your plate. We don't think about the people sweating in the fields that gave us our cucumbers and our squash and our tomatoes and our beef and whatever it is you enjoy. But somebody put a ton of work into this. And when we slow down to reflect it, it not only connects us with them, but it serves to honor them as well. So that's my first challenge. And like I said, there are prizes, so be sure to pay attention to that. I'll tell you what the prize is toward the end. Unless I forget, then somebody remind me. So let's take a look at the Aramaic and some of the stuff, because there's an interesting twist here that was alluded to in this, one of the songs that Ann led us in singing, the Breathe song. And it turns out it's actually historically and biblically accurate. So this comes from Neil David Douglas Klotz, who gave us the Prayer of the Cosmos. He's an Aramaic scholar and a poet. And he says this, a word very rich in meaning, lakma, is both bread and understanding, food for all forms of growth and for elementary life in general. It is derived from a more basic root relating to the divine feminine, which pictures growing vigor, verdancy, warmth, passion, possibility, and all instruments of this generative power. This root became the word hakma, translated as holy wisdom in Proverbs. Later, this root would be rendered by the Greek word Sophia, again, a divine feminine image, referring to an embodiment of all feminine wisdom. So when we have the audacity to say something like, we are honoring Mother Earth, we're actually tying right back into this, because the kind of wisdom and understanding we're calling for is that kind of womb-like being, that presence that gives us everything we need to survive. He goes on to say, this part of prayer reminds us in many ways that sometimes what we need is not only the grand picture of unity and God's creation, but also the next step, just food or understanding for this moment. In the first half of the prayer, we remember the one and feel our blessing from the divine. The Our Father who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name, thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. And the second half, which begins with today's line, we begin a new cycle of blessing, but in an even more embodied and practical way. We face each other and we remember the divine many. And when he's talking about divine many, one, in terms of our own old theology, we see in that first creation poem in Genesis chapter 1 that we see a community in the presence of God, not just one. It's one, but in community somehow. And if we really believe that God is everywhere and in all people at all times, that means that God is already in some sense residing in me and you. And so when we look at each other, we see the divine many, and we imagine the divine many, even many more, many, many miles away. He goes on and says this. This section begins from the earth up, food. The prayer pushes us beyond an introverted spirituality to consider everything in our dealings with others. In reminding us of understanding, the prayer points to what always stands under and supports us, the Mother Earth. We can make that support more real by feeding each other. We can also treasure the source of that bread by not hoarding or demanding from the earth more than we need, by respecting the source of our most basic support. So he's turning into some ethical questions here about how much are we eating, how much are we hoarding, how much are we consuming, and what impact is that having on everyone else who shares this planet with us. What effect does it have on the environment? What effect does it have on the people that are getting that food to our table? Many centuries ago, like 1600 centuries ago, Gregory of Nyssa, one of the church fathers, said this: "You are the true director of your prayer if your abundance does not come from what belongs to others, if your income is not derived from tears, if no one goes hungry because of your satiety, if no one groans on account of your fullness. Indeed, this is the bread from God, the fruit of justice, the stalk of peace, the bread that is pure and unmixed with the seeds of weeds." So I am not naive. I know that the issues of food scarcity in our world are incredibly complex and complicated. That it is easy to just sweep or paint with broad strokes to try to understand it all. And there are some cases of this where it sure seems like broad strokes are a pretty good explanation. When we see, seems like cyclical revolutionary wars in Eastern Africa that cause literal starvation of children and their people. And again, it seems like every generation there's a new generation that has to say goodbye in such horrors because of civil war. Or right now, we are getting graphic photos and news from Gaza, where because supply trucks have not been allowed to get into Gaza, there is a famine happening within the rubble of that former city. And we look at that and we get angry about that because our country's paid for some of that food that's trying to get in and tried to get food there, and it's been restricted in getting in, and that's deeply troubling and frustrating. And to further complicate matters, the ones who apparently are getting in the way of that of those food trucks and supplies are supposed to be one of our great allies, Israel, who not only is a political ally, but is the home of the root of our very religion. And so we're in this weird tension of what are you doing? This is not consistent with the way of Jesus that we've learned about treating others with dignity and respect. Complicated, complex. We know this, and yet people suffer anyway. Anywhere there's war, there's hardship like this. And it's easy sometimes, especially in a country so generous as the United States, because the United States is very generous, or has been, over its centuries. We are also to blame for some of the hardship. Just this year, directives were signed to stop support halfway around the world that was offering food and medical goods for those who desperately need it. Stuff that's already there, already that needed to go out, that could have helped. And because the stroke of a pen happened, it just stopped. And literal tons of food just went to waste in storehouses. Medication that could have kept mothers infected with HIV alive so that they could continue to care for their children, and medication for those children as well, never got to them. That's reality. That's the ethical dilemma that Gregory of Nyssa is getting at. How do we live our lives in such a complicated world? How does "give us this day our daily bread" cause us to take a pause and wonder, what are we doing with our lives? Are we conscious of what we're doing with our lives? I think that's part of the brilliance of the pause, is just to first recognize the majesty of this incredible planet, that it continues to provide food for us, and that we are in harmony together to a degree because we continue to eat. The food continues to show up in the grocery store. So starting with that awe is fantastic. But then taking a deeper look and wondering, is the food that we enjoy and the abundance that we have, is this as accessible everywhere for everyone? Even right here in Napa, because we know it's not. That's part of Crosswalk's work. You already heard about that earlier today. One of the incredible things that we do is those people who cannot get what they need at the food bank, that's where Carrie and Linda shine. And it's because of your generosity that happens. So good on you. That's fantastic. Well, we've got a little bit more to say about that, but remember that each week we've been looking at this Aramaic behind this prayer. Neil Douglas Klotz has given us his own poetic rendition or interpretation of what this means, and he's done this again. So this whole poem is another way of expressing just the simple line, "Give us this day our daily bread." Grant what we need each day in bread and insight, substance for the call of growing life. Give us the food we need to grow through each new day, through each illumination of life's needs. Let the measure of our need be earthiness. Give all things simple, verdant, passionate. Produce in us, for us, the possible, for each only human step toward home lit up. Help us fulfill what lies within the circle of our lives. Each day we ask no more, no less. Animate the earth within us. We then feel the wisdom underneath, supporting all. And just a side note, lest in our Western world we think that our world does not have its own crazy wisdom about it. It does. The forests talk to themselves under the soil. It's incredible what is going on beneath the surface. And the final line here. Generate through us the bread of life. We hold only what is asked to feed the next mouth. Grant what we need each day in bread and insight. So on the last part of that insight, that brings me to another challenge. If bread is not just literal bread and appreciating food, if bread is also wisdom and having insight, how can we work that into our lives more fully? And so here's my advice to you, and this is challenge number 2. As you enjoy your literal bread at mealtime, full of awe and gratitude, consider what bread of understanding or wisdom is before you to partake. We don't often need to think very hard, as sometimes the thing we need to sit with is right in front of our noses. It could be something that just happened to us, or a conflict with someone, or an image that is before us. Sit with it, listening for shalom's instruction. So that word shalom, I think, is the defining characteristic of God. It's a Hebrew word which encompasses love, peace, harmony, well-being, healing. All of that stuff, I think, is represented in the flow and the presence of what we're calling God. It exists everywhere, and that constantly woos us forward. If you're ever wondering, what does God want me to do? Here it is, shalom. That's what God wants you to do. Whatever that looks like to a single decision, I'm not sure. There's probably lots of ways to work that out. But the answer to what is God's will for my life is always that. Shalom. Well-being, love, peace, harmony, supporting other people. It's always shalom, which means if we are looking for wisdom on any little thing that we might need it for, we know it's going to be somehow wrapped in shalom. That's really important. Because if we think that doing something violent towards somebody must be what God wants me to do, well, really? Because shalom seems to suggest otherwise. Let me give you an example of how this worked for me, because here's my take. I think that God's always at work everywhere, constantly around us with all kinds of information and insight and wisdom for our enjoyment and benefit. It's always there. You're never going to see it all. You're never going to get it all. Don't feel like you're a loser because you're only, capturing 1%, of all that's out there. Just be grateful for the 1% that you get. There was a time many years ago where there was a crosswalker. He was a very faithful crosswalker, but and he's since long passed. But he and I would lock horns now and again. He had a temper. Never my situation. I've never had a temper in my life, of course, but he had a strong temper, and he would do things around campus now and again that would upset other people, rental groups that we would have, and sometimes me and other people around. And one of those things happened kind of late in the day, and I found out about it and I had to do some cleanup because of what happened. And I was kind of mad because I'd already chewed through about 6 bottles of Rolaids because of my dealings with these kinds of stressors over a period of time. And here was one more, so I was like, man, and I'm kind of stewing on it. I'm a regular human being, right? So I'm having to process through this stuff, kind of stewing. And that next morning, I woke up and I'm eating my eggs or whatever. And I don't know, something just stopped me in my tracks. And because part of what I was imagining was coming in to the campus and having to deal with another mess and have to deal with this and probably going to escalate, and I got to deal with that and got to calm these people down and got to calm those people down and all the mess, right? So I'm thinking the absolute worst. And just something in me just stopped me as I'm sitting there. Call it a still small voice. I don't even remember what it was, but something triggered my attention, and it just said, why don't you just take a breath? Why don't you just take a minute and breathe? And so I was like, okay. It's way more fun to stew on things and get mad, but I guess I'll take a breath. And so I took a breath, and in that breath, I sensed that I needed to pray for this situation. I needed to pray for the person. I needed to pray for myself. I needed to pray for this conversation that was going to happen. And so on my drive up, thinking about this, and that whole drive was a prayer. Just, all right, God, pray for him. Pray that, he's going to be chilled out a little bit, that he'll be receptive to what we got to talk about. Pray for myself that I won't get triggered and we'll be right back in the mess. Pray for healing, pray for shalom and this exchange, which I know is going to happen. And I've been anticipating the worst, but I'm praying for something better. And you know what? I came on campus and right away knew I needed to talk to the person. So found him on campus and I was expecting the worst. But you know what? He immediately had a completely different demeanor. He was kind, apologetic, explained what was going on so I had more context for understanding everything that was happening. If I would have just come in all frustrated and expecting and anticipating and feeding into that, we would have had another upscaling kind of conflict, which would have not done anybody any favors. But I think, and maybe something was going on his side too, probably. And maybe the Spirit of God was catching him too and giving him some wisdom, some insight, because God knows everything that's happening. And maybe God over his Wheaties was saying, hey, there might be something to clean up from yesterday. You may not have even recognized, caused some problems. So it might be good for you to take a breath and be open. Who knows what happened in that exchange, but what I do know is what transpired in that day encounter was different than it could have been. And I think it was filled with this wisdom that is always available to us. So you're not going to catch all the wisdom that you're going to have. There's probably been countless things already that have been here for you that you've already missed, and so have I. From you just pumping your pump of coffee into your cup, to grabbing one of the chocolate bars, things out there, to having a conversation with somebody, to feeling the handshake of somebody that you said hi to, or seeing the smile on somebody's face. So many things for you to learn from, gifts to you all throughout the day, and so many more to come. Sometimes the thing that we have to pay attention to is the thing that's right in front of our face, because it's obviously the thing that is on your mind. You may not be able to articulate it. You may just sit down today and you're going to have your lunch and you notice that your shoulders are tight, or that you have a headache and you figure out that it's tension because your face has been tight, or you've got a backache. Well, guess what? Your body system it has your dummy lights right there on your dashboard of your car, right? And it's telling you something's going on here. Why are you so tense? Why are you carrying so much stress? Maybe that's the invitation of God to say, hey, let's work this out. What's going on? Get it out there. Maybe it's a conflict with somebody in a story like I shared, and maybe your opportunity is to say, God, help me understand, how can I do differently with this conflict? Maybe it's a big decision you got to make, and you've got pro-con lists in your future, and you're not exactly sure, and you're just asking God, help me understand what is the shalomiest way forward for my life, because there's lots of different ways forward. I don't know what it is for you, but that's your challenge, is to take pause when you are taking a meal and just be aware. What is the wisdom that is floating right before me? And take advantage of it. Now, I told you there would be prizes, and there are. The prize isn't that this sermon is almost over. The prize is not a crosswalk pen, which you can steal for free every week if you want. And some do. You know who you are. I'm cool with it. That's fine. The prize is what you get. The prize is your well-being. You take pause before you bite that meal today, your lunch. You take pause and slow down, and you be grateful for all the hands that were a part of this incredible thing and the incredible earth that created this feast that you're about to have. That's going to change your disposition. You're going to walk around with more gratitude, and gratitude is proven to improve your life. You slow down, and we learned from Ann this morning that it is going to improve your physiological response to that food. You're going to get the most out of the nutrition that you just put down your gullet. And if you pause for a moment and you ask for that other kind of bread and take pause for that, asking for wisdom, because you're asking for wisdom, you are much more likely to receive it. And that wisdom is probably going to be very helpful, especially if you know going in that the answer that you're looking for is somehow related to shalom. Cuts out a lot of the confusion. What is the shalom wisdom coming forward? One final thing for you, a benediction, and then I'll let you on your way. This comes from our reading from Following the Call, and I thought it was really great. From F.B. Meyer. Answer this prayer so far as you may. And just because the world is so hungry and weary and famishing, go forth and be its breadwinners and its bread givers. As far as you can, help to alleviate the despair and hopelessness the misery and the sin, the brokenness of people by passing on the bread of God, the bread of life, the bread of love, the bread of hope upon which you feed. Share your last crust with another. If you get a glint of light, flash it on. If you get a new truth, communicate it. If you get a baptism of the Holy Spirit, never rest until others rejoice in it too. Thanks for being here today. Hope you had a good experience. We'll see you next week. Thanks a lot.
I'm a million eyes looking in a mirror. I'm deaf and alive, flowing like a river. I am holy ground, let the mount on fire. I am in the sound that'll take you higher.